All right, week 2 in the books. It's Tuesday, so trying to get on this. It's going to be pretty busy here the rest of the week, so hopefully be able to get my predictions in before Thursday night. But I did just download a new software. I can get my desktop up, which makes it way cooler actually to be able to do that. But haven't figured out the audio portion yet, so unfortunately, hopefully you guys continue just to play this, listen to it more of a podcast, and you don't have to look at me or anything, and just kind of deal with the non-visuals of what is happening as I'm talking through it. But week 2, some consistent performers from week 1, some that struggled, some that maybe struggled week 1, blew up in week 2, some that just came out of nowhere and were non-existent in week 1 and came out in week 2. Waiver wire, I'm sure we'll be moving quite a bit again tomorrow morning from Robinson and Harmon and all sorts of different people. Rosert from San Francisco. Don't even know what else is going to be going on here, but some winners, some losers, stuff like that. But so we will continue on here. Reminder, I was 3-2 in last week's picks and projections there. This week we'll see how I turned out again. But let's just dive right into it, take a look, see what's going on here. So first matchup, again, it always kind of starts with myself. So it was myself, Living La Vida Loca versus Jailbait, Matthew. I did project myself to come out with the win on this one. I need to shut this off. I did project myself coming out with a win on this matchup, and it held true here. So 1-0 going into week 2 for matchups here, winning 124.5 to 105. Really not much overall here for excitement from a matchup perspective. Came out pretty quick and heavy and never really looked back. So it was a good feeling on my end. So needed to hopefully knock Matt down a peg or two after taking down my number 1 overall preseason prediction for team for winning it all, which I will get into later in this, which not looking good on that prediction currently, but a lot of season left. So going into it, Patrick Mahomes is looking like just a solid first-round pick right now, right? I mean, everybody is going to sit there and talk about value, right? Quarterback at the value position, stuff like that. But you know what? For right now, he has thrown up back-to-back 30-plus point games as a quarterback. With this week 34. Granted, everything essentially came in the second quarter, which, by the way, if you didn't see that game, watch those highlights. Just 4 touchdown passes of basically 38 yards or more. Just wham, 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 put up 28 points in the second quarter. Very quick, threw for almost 250 yards in that quarter as well. Didn't do much after that, but still did the damage he needed. And 34-point fantasy week there. Marlon Mack came down to earth with a 7-point game after a phenomenal 170-plus yard week with a touchdown in week 1. So really came realistic. Derrick Henry got in the end zone again. Justin Jackson, you're going to have to find a new flex play there. Struggle. Juju Smith with a backup quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger out for the season with his elbow injury. So we will see what happens at Juju's. Basically, worth and everything, and value with the season going forward with Rudolph there. Josh Gordon didn't get any action, even with New England beating Miami 43-0. Obviously, we'll get into New England's defense in there and a couple of the other players moving forward, but Josh Gordon not on the receiving end or winning end of that with a measly 2 fantasy points there. Ertz solid, and so on and so forth. So Drew Brees out on the bench here. Adrian Peterson seemed like a promising pickup early. Other than getting into the end zone, he really didn't do much. But bench here, there are no real true flex plays to toss in at this time with what people have been doing here. So not a bad week, 105 points. Does put him, right around that mid, probably 6th highest scoring team. It looks like 5th highest scoring team throughout. So not surprised, right? Kind of going there, but not a bad week, but not a good week outing either. So myself here, Lamar Jackson continues to, I believe he is the number 2 overall quarterback right now with back-to-back phenomenal weeks. This week, he instead of throwing for 5 touchdowns, he ran for over 120 yards on the ground, which was phenomenal. Obviously scary being a running quarterback, but as long as he stays healthy, he is doing work. Le'Veon Bell had a horrendous game. When you talk about just, if anybody watched that Monday night game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The Jets look absolutely terrible down to their 3rd-string quarterback after Trevor Siemian goes down with, I guess, is a dislocated ankle. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but anybody that saw that kind of gave you the willies. Being able to see that happen in that slow-mo replay, but still ended with 15 points with 10 catches and basically 60-plus on the ground and 60-plus through the air. So even in a terribly offensive game where they only score 3 points, still gave 15 fantasy points, which definitely will not argue that at all moving forward. Very, very low floor, or high floor, my mistake, when knowing that just an ugly game and he still gets you 15 fantasy. That's always nice. Dalvin Cook blew up again against the Green Bay Packers. Career high yards and rushing. I think it was 154. Broke out a sweet 75-yard rushing touchdown, I believe it was. Slipping through some tacklers there, but 27.5-point performance, so phenomenal. Josh Jacobs, not targeted, unfortunately, but 99 yards on the ground. So all things considered, and again, just a really poor performance from a team perspective against Kansas City. T.Y. Hilton did just fine. Kenny Golladay had a phenomenal game of 22. Njoku barely even played, out with concussion protocol, unfortunately, early in the game. So, and Dan Bailey, he's got to get his shit together. Missed field goal, missed extra point, et cetera, there for everybody that was watching the game. But on my bench here, Chris Godwin had a phenomenal game. Great outing there. And, of course, Austin Eckler continues to perform very, very well with Melvin Gordon out. So some really good performances there. It was a great matchup, Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Mahomes got the best of them by just a few points. Obviously, that's a 1st-rounder going against a 10th-rounder as well, maybe even 11th. So I will take that every day of the week. And just really good outing for Team Livin' La Vida Loca, winning 124.5 to 105. And now Jailbait goes 1-1 to myself at 2-0. Looking at my preseason favorite, Team Dinglegary, not a good start. 0-2, getting destroyed. Just a measly 79.5 points against Nutlock's 128, who is now 1-1 and looking good early in the season here. So looking at Team Dinglegary, thought this team was going to be explosive. Looking at it preseason, wise, he got Deshaun Watson, had a great week 1, came down to earth, only 12 points in week 2. Devontae Freeman continues to struggle. Sony Michel looked good early, got in the end zone, but still only ended with 12 fantasy points after a rough week 1. Devontae Adams jumped back with quite a bit of targets and receptions, but 14.5, still looking for his really big game in that Green Bay offense to really get clicking. Devontae Adams, I honestly believe is still going to be considered one of the easily a top 5 receiver by the end of the year, but really has to kind of get clicking with Aaron Rodgers and get that whole offense going, because other than the first quarter against Minnesota, I mean, they went stagnant, couldn't score, obviously. Michael Thomas, bad news about Drew Brees going out in the first quarter of week 2 with a thumb injury, going to be out about 6 weeks, it sounds like. So we will see how Teddy Two Gloves comes in and performs, and how that works out for Michael Thomas. Still believe he's going to be just fine with just pure volume. Teddy Two Gloves is not a Drew Brees, unfortunately, but starting quarterback with the Vikings, everybody remembers him. Knee injury was looking promising, stuff like that. I think he's going to be just fine. New Orleans will lose some games because he's just not Drew Brees caliber, but I think they'll still be all right there. And if you're looking to get rid of him because of that, Gary, go ahead and send me a trade. Keenan Allen looking solid, another 13-point performance, still only scoring 10 points. The Chargers look questionable, but Keenan Allen's looking strong with Phillip Rivers there, so this receiving core is still going to look good. Nothing blew up like you would expect, just based on volume and their talent level. But those running backs and Deshaun Watson's just got to be a little bit more productive and really got to go be consistent here moving forward. Otherwise, Team Dinglegary is going to be looking tough right now with the start here, but only 2 weeks in, not worried. I think this team is going to still, win quite a few games and really make a push for those playoffs. So not concerned on that team. They're looking at the bench. Not a lot going on. Rashad Penny had a big run there for a touchdown. Only reason he's at 12.5 there. And everybody else is somewhat irrelevant there. Looking at Nutlock, getting his first win of the season at 1-1. Carson Wentz again. Started off slow, was a little shaky there early. Thought he might be out for the game with some kind of injury. He got hit pretty hard in the ribs. I don't know if it was originally a rib injury or not, but he was actually out for a short period of time with McCown coming in and making a few plays for Philly, but Wentz eventually coming back in, finishing out the game, doing what he needed to do in a loss there against Atlanta. But 17 fantasy points. Zeke, another good game there. 19 points, right where you expect him to be. Waiting for his big explosive week still, but week 2, just getting into it. So I have a feeling he's going to be sitting pretty good. Kerryon Johnson had a decent week at 15 fantasy points. It's a little fake, right? He had the big catch and run of about like a 34-yard touchdown, and you take that away, and he has just a really sad thing. They're just not utilizing him as everybody thought they would. They're giving a lot of carries out to other people. He's only getting about 12 touches, 14 touches or so on the ground. So it's been a little disappointing for Kerryon, but you know what? Decent week. Got him the win. Everything there. Antonio Brown had a great debut. Got in the end zone. Quite a few catches there with 13 fantasy points and New England's big win. Antonio Brown was one of the New England players that was a winner that week or this last week. Odell Beckham looking, Cleveland not looking very good, especially early, but big fourth quarter performance there by Odell, getting all the way up to 150 plus yards and a touchdown for a 27 fantasy point performance there. Didn't really necessarily need it, but took care of business there on Monday night to secure the win and do what was needed. Sammy Watkins came down to earth as expected, even though that Kansas City offense has just been insane. With Robinson going off for a couple touchdowns last week, Harmon, a couple, you would call no-name guys, right, coming in on Tyreek Hill's injury and really cashing in on their opportunity right now, and Mahomes just placing dimes and letting them basically just go and make plays. So we'll see how Sammy Watkins turns out. I know Nutlock's been looking to ship him, so if you're, high on Sammy, go ahead and kick Paul a little trade there and see if you can get him for, the price you want. Mark Andrews is turning out to be just a stud of a tight end, right? Everybody was talking about TJ Hawkinson after week 1. Well, there's a half point compared to Mark Andrews' big week 1, and he fires right back with another big week 2 with 22 fantasy points and another 2 touchdowns. So Mark Andrews is just looking phenomenal right now with that Baltimore team. We will see how that shapes out throughout the season, but looking really, really, really good for Mark Andrews. The bench here, not a lot going on. Peyton Barber had a solid game, along with Matt Breida, but Matt Breida, San Francisco put up 41 points. Matt Breida only about 12 or 13 carries, something like that. It was like 15 total touches. Got in the end zone, beat Cincinnati 41-17. That's not something you're going to see every day. And Peyton Barber had his solid game on Thursday night against Carolina with 14.5 points, which again, personally, I will not trust that on a week-to-week basis. But I suppose if he keeps going where he needs to go, might not be a bad bye week fill if that stays the same throughout the week. Biggest beatdown, scoring separation of the week. 2 girlies, 1 cup. Goes to 1-1 with 148 points. I believe, yes, was the high score of the week. To, again, Sam Urgo, who has now gone back-to-back weeks being the low score with a measly 72 fantasy points. Not far off from a couple of the guys, but unfortunately this team, which Urgo called it as the defending champion, he was not impressed with his team coming off the draft. So we'll dig into it a little bit more here. 2 girlies, 1 cup. Dak Prescott, another great outing in a 31-point performance. 27 fantasy points, winning 31-21. Todd Gurley, not great, but got in the end zone, so it looked pretty good with 13.5. Aaron Jones had a phenomenal game, which I know half of us were hoping didn't happen, half were praying for it. But 23 fantasy points there against a tough Minnesota D. So pretty impressive there that he did the work that he did on Sunday. Chris Carson, like I said, Rashad Penny got a pretty decent run there for a touchdown, so pretty much stole that, but 7.5. Cooper Kupp had a solid week. Actually got robbed a touchdown there. Reviewed the play, was called out at the 1-yard line, so missed any kind of big play bonuses, plus the 6 points for the touchdown there, so it could have been even a bigger week there. Calvin Ridley had a great week. That's kind of back-to-back there. He's looking really good. Great compliment to Julio, and, Matt Ryan likes to air it out, so going well there. Travis Kelce, big week. A lot to go around there in Kansas City right now with Pat Mahomes just throwing touchdowns because that's what he does right now. So Kelce bouncing back after only a 3-catch performance in week 1 to 20.5 points with his first touchdown of the season. This year, Browns D, good outing there with 13 against just a horrendous Jets team on their 3rd-string quarterback. So we will have to see how that shakes out moving forward. On the bench there, pretty surprising. Terry McLaurin had another good outing there. That's back-to-back good outings there. Along with Marquez Brown, Mecole Hardman, and DK Metcalf. This team's got and not to leave out Mike Williams there from the Chargers. A lot of receivers here on the bench for 2 girlies, 1 cup to really kind of pick and choose. So it might get dicey down the stretch there if he starts having to play the guessing game on who he wants to play. Going to Urgo's team, Baker Mayfield looked terrible early and throughout the game. Obviously a decent 4th quarter, throwing for a touchdown, everything. Put him at 17 points, a respectable week. Alvin Kamara, bust week there after Drew Brees went out against the Rams. James Conner goes out with a knee injury. Nothing serious there, but 11.5 points and still went out with a knee injury, so looking halfway decent. Shady McCoy hopefully can look to play somebody else in that flex. Really surprised he didn't have David Montgomery in there over Shady McCoy, but easy to say in hindsight. I get it. Tyler Lockett, not a bad game there. Deshaun Jackson went out very, very early in the 1st quarter, so he didn't even get a target, I don't believe. So big goose egg does not help this team. Kittle is not performing. Even after 41 points for San Francisco, and George Kittle only ends with 6.5 points, that is heartbreaking. You really don't want to see that when you're thinking George Kittle is San Francisco's number 1 option, running and throwing. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to shape out here. And like I said, David Montgomery on the bench here, decided to bench David Montgomery, 12.5 for him, got his first NFL touchdown. It took the Bears 5 plays inside, I think it was 3 yards, to finally punch it home with David Montgomery after a defensive penalty. But hey, got it in, did what they needed to do. By the way, if you didn't see the end of that game, insane, and can't believe what Denver did to take the lead and then to give it up. And the Bears got a kicker that made what they needed to make. But going through, Robbie Anderson, had a couple big plays, gave him 10 points, double digits. John Ross III got a lucky play, essentially, that gave him 21, so he looks good, but still wouldn't trust him. Dante Moncrief, just disappointing, along with D.D. Westbrook right now, moving forward. So looking at this team, not surprised they're only scoring 72 points. Even if you add all their bench points, they're still going to lose this week. So Urgel's got an uphill climb moving forward, but as we know, even if he starts playing, the spoiler alert, it happens. Going into, oh, and I'm sorry, I had 2 girlies, 1 cup winning that game. So that puts me at 2-1 this week on predictions. So not a bad start there. Multiple scoregasms. Marty versus Titanic Swim Team. Brandon. Scoregasms took care of business, 107.5 to 93.5. So Marty goes 2-0 with the second overall pick. And Brandon, with the 10th pick on the wheel, goes 1-1 moving forward into week 3. Kyler Murray, again, he's faring to be at least just a standard quarterback here. He hasn't, tanked yet. He hasn't gone off yet, but, sitting around those 16, 17, 18 points. And another loss to Baltimore, so Arizona's 0-2. But can't complain with the play. Barkley rips off another huge run early in the game. He ends with 20.5, so another solid outing. If New York could just not be down 21 points at halftime or whatever it is every single time, or if they would just not care and just give him the ball in every goddamn play, Barkley has a chance to really just go off here. Leonard Fournette, not looking good. I was high on him, high hopes there. Big back, good player. I don't know if it's just the offense isn't good or if he just kind of tips over. I'm not really sure what it is, but got into double digits, but still kind of a disappointing run there. Edelman, I don't want to say got stuff taken away. Obviously, 2 defensive touchdowns, which I'll get into again later, by New England. It keeps New England's offense off the field. But, well, I'm getting really good at this yawning thing, so I apologize. That's what always happens after a hard day of work, man. But, 7 points, can't complain. Julio has a huge second half, 2 touchdowns, 2 big touchdowns. 26.5 was looking pretty bleak there after the first half of that game, but came through, did what Julio does. Tyrell Williams looking really good there for Oakland. Seems like by far the number 1 option with their tight end Worley, something like that as a number 2 option, but 12.5. So Williams has had back-to-back good games with even kind of a disappointing Oakland team right now. So seeing what's happening there. And on the bench here, you got Tyler Boyd had another good game with 18. Kenyon Drake, just that whole Miami team just seems terrible. Christian Kirk, a solid game there with 15. Emmanuel Sanders is looking like a young Emmanuel Sanders. He is looking good. 22.5 with Denver only scoring 14 points. Had a ton of targets, some great catches. Emmanuel Sanders looked good. So, Devin Singletary as well. They're just not giving the ball. I don't know why. He's been explosive every time he's had it, back-to-back weeks. Not a lot of workload, but has broke something out every time and done well. And he put up 11 fantasy points in their win against the Giants. So I'm interested to see, later in the season how Singletary is going to shake out there, and could be a great play down the stretch as this season progresses. Going over to Brandon's team, Aaron Rodgers, looking, honestly, mediocre quarterback play right now. 14 fantasy points, just really disappointing for Aaron Rodgers. He's been a game manager, sure, but been pretty disappointing. David Johnson, another disappointing outing, 7.5. Not looking good there for him. Nick Chubb started hot there in Cleveland with a nice rushing touchdown, and it was 17. Definitely respectable. Cortland Sutton had a tough time against Chicago's D with 6. Diggs only had the 1 decent play for a touchdown. Obviously, that 1 touchdown called back. Bullshit. How do you review shenanigan offensive pass interference like they did and reverse that when it wasn't the call on the field? Don't even want to get into it. It's whatever. Stephon Diggs did get screwed out of another touchdown, though. He could have had a pretty solid week. if that was not the case. Larry Fitz continues to prove that, hey man, they're in Arizona, not going to stop them. And so, I mean, good play, 13.5 points. Evan Ingram, okay, whatever. Justin Tucker had a good week for his kicking with 13 there. Joe Mixon on the bench, rightfully so. He's struggling. O.J. Howard didn't even have a catch, which is disappointing. Good play, put Ingram in instead of Howard. And, a couple other here, nothing major. But, looking at these two teams, I like Scoregasms moving forward right now. It's got a couple question marks here, like, do you put him in, do you not put him in, kind of things, and hopefully it's not a guessing game for him moving forward. But as for Titanic Swim Team, you're really pretty much set with your lineup that you have there, and you got to let it run and see what happens. So we will see. I did have Scoregasms winning that game, so 3-1 this week in predictions, and going into the final matchup here, I did not get this correct. So Chris drops to 0-2 with a very rough week at 77 fantasy points here. You can't touch this. Runs house. Scores 112.5, goes to 2-0. You guys can see Matthew's breakdown, basically, of overall, right, your weekly points. How all the different teams that you would beat or lose to and stuff like that. Just that breakdown. So it's kind of a neat thing. Thanks for doing that, Matt. To just see how, you'd be lining up against all teams with the points that you're scoring week to week to week and everything along those lines. So pretty neat. But Jason goes to 2-0. Chris to 0-2. Looking at Chris's team, this was pretty much over after Thursday without a complete, destruction of Jason's team, because Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, and Mike Evans, 3 of your top players, essentially combined for 25 on Thursday Night Football. That's a tough one to overcome. That's not the way you like to start the week out by any means. Ingram came down to earth with 8. Thielen, 9.5. Brandon Cooks, solid game at 14.5. But Jared Cook, again, Drew Brees going out, just 3. Just really didn't have that week. Nobody broke over 15 points for this team. Very, very difficult to win a week when that happens. You're just hoping and praying that your opponent just falls apart right with you. So Tom Brady on the bench here, probably going to be the starter going into week 3, I would assume, on this team. Just he's been a sure thing. Plus, their schedule is just too easy. We'll see, though, if the fan of Cam Newton wants to continue running with Mr. Newton. That does not look good after 2 weeks of football. You can't touch this. Russell Wilson, solid game at 25. Damian Williams, I really don't know about that running back situation in Kansas City between him and Shady McCoy. They're just not really using him. You got Mahomes there, so it's kind of weird. James White ended up having a decent game thanks to a touchdown. Otherwise, was looking pretty bleak, but, worked out at 9.5. Philip Lindsay, it's weird. He's clearly better than Royce Freeman right now for, basically a majority of the plays and just way more versatile. But splitting, still ended with 8. Respectable. DeAndre Hopkins had a tough game. Amari Cooper, all right. As I previously mentioned, Darren Waller, actually probably one of the better tight ends that it looks like overall right now. He's probably right on that tight end, 10 mark back-to-back weeks, so see what happens. But the big kicker here, Patriots defense, 37 fantasy points, 2 pick sixes down the stretch, gave up 0 points. I don't even know how many other interceptions and sacks and fumble recovers that they had, but Miami is fucking terrible. If you can pick up any defense that's going to be playing Miami week to week to week, they have a chance to give you 20-plus points every single week. And he needed it because Matt Prater gave a goose egg as a kicker, which is not fun to see. Vance McDonald, though, on the bench, I think he had 2 touchdowns for Pittsburgh in that loss to Seattle. But, what do you do? It is what it is with 18.5. Jared Goff on the bench with 19, which is irrelevant. So, again, actually, I have a feeling this team's just going to be up and down all the way through. Philip Lindsay's always, you never know. Damian Williams right now, James White, this running back core is just a shrug of the shoulders and you don't know what's happening, right? Malcolm Brown on the bench is supposedly getting the goal line work and everything there in the Los Angeles, but really a lot is in question there. Duke Johnson, everybody thought, shit, Lamar Miller is out. Duke Johnson, time to step up. Not so much. And then Tariq Cohen, I don't even know if they want to use him in Chicago right now or what the deal is. But Chicago's offense is absolutely asininely disgusting because they can't move the ball. Trubisky's terrible. I don't even know what you're watching when you're watching Chicago's offense. Their defense is stellar. Offense, not so much. So we will see, but a great 2-0 start for You Can't Touch This, even with a team I might rag on a little bit right now. And unfortunately, 4th and inches. Boom. 0-2. I did have You Can't Touch This losing to Chris. So 3-2 is how I end again with being 6-4 on the season. So not too bad. I'll take above 500 each and every time moving forward. So with that said, get on the waiver wire, get those trades rolling, do what you need to do. I get it. It's only week 2. But, start getting high on some players, sell high, buy low, whatever you need to do. If you think a player is going to continue running, really well or pick it up after a couple struggle weeks here or whatever the case might be, look into it. It's always fun to see some movement there. But other than that, I enjoy the texting. I appreciate the trash talk that's happening kind of throughout, the random shit. Matt, again, I appreciate throwing up that breakdown there. Making use of that message board. Everybody should, poke on, make a poll, do whatever you guys want. Even if it's something that you want to throw on there for another fantasy league, right? You just want to fuck around and get somebody's opinion on who should you start or something along those lines if it's another fantasy league. So jump on it, have some fun, keep things moving. I will hopefully get week 3 predictions up here. Like I said, hopefully Thursday night. I'm thinking because tomorrow I am too busy. But with that said, I'm going to continue trying to get this software to work and everything like that. But good luck. Get your lineup set, and we will continue on. And I will see you guys later. If nobody's doing anything this weekend for the games, hit me up, whatever. Maybe I'll swing out that direction just for something to do. And keep in mind here, I might kick something out for a Sunday for everybody to meet, whether, it's just some central location, stuff like that. Get together, hit up a bar, whatever. Get some food, get some drinks, and, just get us together as a league and watch some Sunday football and have a good time. And maybe a couple of us can get in a fist fight with each other, all right? All right, you guys enjoy. Hope you enjoy the little bit of commentary, and good night.